Hello, everyone. Angela Priven from Do It Yourself Health, and I'm here with another IBS survivor and thriver. This is Jennifer Broyles, and she is a certified health and nutrition coach who specializes in gut health and adrenal fatigue, and she helps people regain their vitality through nutrition and essential oils. So today we're talking to her about how she regained her gut health. So welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I'm very glad to be here.
All right, so let's just dive in. I wanted to ask you, I know that your own experiences is what inspired you to get interested in health and start helping others and learning about it yourself. So let's talk about your own IBS symptoms and when they started, what was going on in your life at the time.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So first of all, I realize now that growing up, I did not have optimal digestion. I never realized it at the time. It never got in my way, but I definitely was, more on the constipated side most of my life. But it wasn't interfering with my life. I didn't really even know what normal digestion was supposed to look like. But I guess it was in college when I really started experiencing painful, uncomfortable symptoms that were really starting to affect me. And it was after I went on some antibiotics for acne, actually. I had never had skin issues before. And then in college, I started experiencing some breakouts. I'm sure it had to do with the awful diet I was eating in college. But I was put on antibiotics, and that's when I started experiencing just a worsening of symptoms, just really bad constipation, a lot of bloating, just a ton of abdominal discomfort. And I didn't know what it was at the time. I didn't link the two together. I just thought, something weird was going on and I would get over it. And it was interesting because around the same time, I was studying abroad in Spain. And so I thought, oh, well, maybe it's because I'm like in a different country and I'm eating different food, and maybe that's just, messing me up a little bit. And so I thought, oh, well, when I get back to the States and back in my normal lifestyle, things will go back to normal. And they didn't. Even when I stopped taking that medication, things didn't go back to normal, and they just kind of persisted. And I knew nothing about nutrition at all in college. I didn't know what real food or health meant. I didn't know the role of the gut. I didn't know what the microbiome was. I didn't know any of this. And so I just tried to manage it the best I could. I didn't talk to anybody about it. I was kind of embarrassed. It wasn't something I went into openly share. So I just managed it the best I could. And then it wasn't until years later that I finally decided to go see a doctor about my issues because they just were not easing up. So yeah, it's interesting looking back to see how it kind of all unfolded, and if only I knew then what I know now.
Yeah, so you obviously got an IBS diagnosis like the rest of us, but then left on your own devices. So how did you finally figure out it was SIBO and finally address it?
It was kind of a long road. So yes, so when I first started seeing doctors about this, I went to just my primary care doctor, and she ran a couple tests, and it's like, yeah, you have IBS. And at that time I was like, sweet, I know what's wrong with me. I have IBS. Now we can fix it, right? And unfortunately, that's not the case, because IBS is a diagnosis of exclusion, meaning they don't really know what is wrong with you. You're just having these symptoms. And so I tried a few different prescription medications, none of which really alleviated my symptoms. And then I went to see a gastroenterologist who ran a few other tests and didn't really find anything wrong. And then during that time, I started really doing my own reading and research. At that time, I was working in pharmaceutical sales. And so I was a huge believer that medications were like the healing, the healing cures out there. And I still think there's, I'm not opposed to pharmaceuticals, but I think there's definitely natural approaches you can take to help you out as well. And so I was kind of in a place where I felt very stuck, because I really believed at the time in conventional medicine and pharmaceuticals, but none of them were helping me. And I was like, what's going on? And so I started doing my own reading and research and really started understanding the role of food. Like I said, I didn't know much about nutrition, but I started reading about it and became very passionate about it. I started reading and learning about natural supplementation and, getting to the root cause of an issue rather than just masking the symptoms. And all of that was really fascinating to me. And it led me down this whole path of going back to school to study nutrition and changing my career. And it's ultimately what led me here. But through that whole process, I started working with some functional medicine doctors, doing some more testing. And I will say kind of in that as well, in this whole thing, while I was in school and doing all of this and starting to get into functional medicine, my symptoms were continually just getting worse and worse and worse. I ended up spending a week at the Mayo Clinic and leaving there with no answers at all. I had every test done in the book and they couldn't tell me what was wrong. So it wasn't until I got back from there that I found a functional medicine doctor that I really liked, and we did some testing, found out that I did have SIBO and started treating it. And even before I had had that particular SIBO test done, I had done previous SIBO treatments. They just weren't called that at the time. Like I was put on rifaximin by my GI doctor, and that did not help me at all. I had been put on like an herbal antimicrobial protocol by one of my other doctors that didn't really help me at all. And then once I got the SIBO diagnosis, I did another herbal treatment that helped a little bit, but not a ton. And then I did a round of pharmaceuticals that made me worse. So it was just this it was this crazy situation where all these things that are supposed to help SIBO just were not helping me. And so it was kind of a frustrating path. And I'm sure, a lot of your listeners may be experiencing the same thing, that first of all, if you have SIBO, a lot of times it takes more than one treatment, just depending on the severity of your case. But also what works for one person may not work for another. And so it's really fine tuning and finding that treatment that works for you. So for me, it took a lot of trial and error, but eventually I got there. So
what finally worked for you?
I'd say, and it's honestly one of those things where I don't have a clear-cut answer, because after I did rifaximin and neomycin, which is the combination that made me feel a lot worse, actually. I did a protocol with some broad spectrum antimicrobials that helped, but they didn't completely get rid of SIBO. And I used some probiotics in there that I found to be helpful. And then after that, I tried the homemade elemental diet. And I lasted one day on that. That was like the worst thing I have ever done. And so
it didn't taste very good, right? I hear
it's not good at all. But I will say, in terms of elemental diet, there is a great one out there now by Integrative Therapeutics.
Clients. And actually, you know what the funny thing is that I snack on it.
Yes, that's awesome.
I love it. I actually love it. It's like,
it does. It tastes great. Like when I was at the SIBO symposium last year, and they were sampling it, I was like, oh my gosh, like, why did you not have this when I was going through that? Because like, I could do that for 14 days, but the homemade one, I could not handle. It made me really sick. But yeah, so I'm glad there's like a good one out there now that actually tastes pretty good.
Yeah, and I've had some really good results with my clients on it as well.
Great.
But you were right. It does take several rounds.
It does. It really does. And it takes time. So one thing that I found to work really well for me that isn't even necessarily proven for SIBO, but it is a blend of essential oils, but they're all antimicrobial. So it's oregano and thyme and melaleuca and lemon and lemongrass and peppermint. And it was so I did this blend for a while, and I still do it kind of intermittently, like, a couple days out of the month, mainly for prevention. But that was incredibly effective for me. And it was just one of those things where I was like, I'm going to try it. It's got the properties to work. And it really, really helped me out.
So was that your impetus? I know that you're really into essential oils now and use them a lot in your practice. So, okay.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. It's one of the things that's helped me the most, out of all the things I've tried. So
Great.
yeah. Yeah.
What do you think, in your opinion, as a professional, someone who's been through it, and as a professional, what do you think is the root cause of SIBO?
I think there's potentially a lot of different root causes. The one that seems to be the most common is post-infectious IBS, so food poisoning, because food poisoning does damage the small intestine in certain people, and about 10% of the population who get those who get food poisoning will have post-infectious IBS, and that is becoming known as SIBO. And that just happens through, there's a toxin in, the most common bacteria that cause food poisoning. There's a toxin in there that actually damages the small intestine and the migrating motor complex. And it actually has kind of an autoimmune component where your body starts attacking what it thinks is this toxin, but it looks very similar to some of the cells in your small intestine. So it literally starts attacking your small intestine. So there is an autoimmune component to that. And that food poisoning is being shown to be one of the most common causes of SIBO, but it's not the only one. So I think antibiotic use absolutely can contribute to SIBO because, especially harsh long-term antibiotics, they're going to cause dysbiosis in the gut, and dysbiosis can absolutely contribute to, an overgrowth and imbalance in the bacteria in your small intestine as well. So I think that can be a contributing factor. Any type of blockage or adhesion that might be present in your gut can certainly contribute to SIBO because it can cause bacteria to build up and kind of get stuck. So that is a contributing factor. So I'd say those are some of the main things that I think cause SIBO. But I think we're finding it can be a lot of different things. So
right, it's different for everyone. But thank you for sharing those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just my last question is, what's life like post SIBO? What's your diet like? And
yeah. So I've kind of done over the years a bunch of different diets. So initially, when I kind of got into the world of natural health, I started off doing gluten and dairy free because I did, food sensitivity tests that showed me that I was reacting to gluten and dairy. So I took those out, and it was helpful for a period of time, but it helped, like, it didn't necessarily help my gut symptoms. It helped other non-GI symptoms. Like I had at the time was experiencing headaches and skin issues and things like that I feel like it really helped with, but my gut issues still stayed the same. So that was kind of the starting place for me in my whole diet experiment. And then from there, I, did some more elimination diets and found for me a paleo style diet works really well. And, I've done super, restrictive paleo. I've done elimination diets. I've done, strictly low FODMAP. Tried it all. And so I find I do what I consider now like a modified paleo. It's paleo-ish. But there are some grains that I can, like rice and, some other non-paleo foods that I allow myself to have. Sometimes gluten-free bread, things like that I feel like I can tolerate okay. I went for a period of time not having any of that. And since then I've added things back in. I do find that if I get too much fiber, too many prebiotics, I experience digestive symptoms like additional, just bloating and things like that. So I do try to limit that. I don't do like complete low FODMAP, but it's probably a lower FODMAP than the average paleo diet, if that makes sense. So it's very customized to me and what I know is kind of my tolerability. I still find that fiber and prebiotics, too much of them, cause problems for me. So I just do my best to limit those. And so I try not to be real strict with myself. I mean, within those parameters, I'm definitely gluten-free. I will probably always be gluten-free. I'm not totally dairy-free. I eat butter. I'll eat small amounts of cheese sometimes, but I'd say I'm lactose-free. So that's kind of how I am. And I just, I think, and one of the things I work with my clients on is trying to find the most diverse diet that works for them, because I think it is good for a lot of us to do that elimination diet for a period of time, to let our gut heal, just to calm the digestive system and find what we're reacting to. But you don't want to stay on that forever. You want to be able to enjoy a variety of foods, not only for a variety of nutrients, but also just to have a less stressful life, because stress, I know for me, is a major contributor to gut issues. And so if I'm stressed out over what I'm eating, then I know I'm not going to digest my food well, and I'm going to not feel well. So, keeping it as, stress-free as possible, and being able to enjoy food and socialize and go out with friends and eat at restaurants, ultimately is you're going to be in a much better place when you can do that.
Yeah.
And so that is the long-term goal.
That is the goal.
So yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at now.
Thank you so much for sharing. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. I'm sure that was very helpful. And if you are interested in learning more about essential oils, check out Jen at jenbroyles.com. And thanks for being here. Take care.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Bye.